All right. Hi, everyone. This is Daisy here. I'm here to do a presentation for those of you guys interested in frequency modulation and what it can do for public health, what it has done in public health, and how you can use this in your clinical practice, in your program management, in your future curriculum design, etc. So let's go ahead here. So some of the topics that are covered here, we're going to go over frequency modulation. We're going to go over some of the recent effects on public health. We're going to talk about some of the solutions that can be found with frequency modulation. And then one of the things that I think is like really important when we're talking about like topics where we're talking about like maybe tech and its impact on health, or like maybe like something new in pharmacy or a new concept in biochemistry or whatnot, is how to see these effects. How can you see these effects? How can it be used in your daily life? What are like the proper applications? So I do have like a demo activity that we're going to be able to do regarding some of the concepts that you're going to go ahead and hear here. So I'm really excited about for you guys that are just like learning about this, and you're going to get to have an opportunity to like try this on yourself, or with your friends and your family or whatnot. So let's keep going. All right. So, all right. So let's go ahead and let's continue. All right. So frequency modulation. So some of you guys know about frequency modulation. Some of you guys have maybe heard about like fast Fourier transformation. You've heard about like maybe like machine learning. Um, you may have heard about like digital signal processing. So I don't want to get too much in the weeds, but really frequency modulation, the best way to understand it is like what's a natural frequency and what's a digital frequency, and then how do the two like, collide. So where you have like a natural frequency, you have your heart rate, you have that's ran by what your synovial nodes, which do what they manage the electrical impulse of the heart. So that looks like managing blood flow, managing heart pump, all of that type of stuff, right? It's ran by a specific like little tiny like piece of tissue that in turn like has like a specific type of algorithm that it's running and that it puts out and that it maintains to ensure your heart rate is like steady. So we also have brain waves, right? And then we know that brain waves, are related to your brain chemistry, your diet, your environment, etc. Uh, we have nervous system impulse, so that looks like being able to like put sensors on your body and track like your nervous system, track the logarithm that it's putting out in numeric form or in frequency format, which you see right here. And then we also have like biochemistry, which is a type of frequency. So we know that chemicals themselves, they give off a specific logarithm. So a chemical can give off a specific logarithm that's like a decimal to base 10. And from there, that chemical, depending on what frequency, what range it's operating in, that's like how long it's going to last. That's like the potency of the type of chemical that you're using, right? Phytochemical versus like regular chemical. And that's, you know, where science is going to be moving with medicine, being able to use frequency modulation on your health, because that's what's been impacting us for so long throughout our like, individual communities, right? So digital frequency modulation. So when we're talking about digital frequency, that looks like heart monitors. That looks like radio waves, microwave. Computers give off EMF like frequency. Another type of frequency modulation we'll talk about is equations. But in this sense, you can have different type of equations like physics equations, chemistry equations, and then you can output them, or you can do modeling, right? Where you could say, oh, I'm going to take this equation and then I'm going to be able to go ahead and then model it here in this grid, and then I can see outputs, right? So we're talking about frequency modulation. one of the things that has been happening is the specific use of like algorithms in C++ plus plus and Python, computer science languages, and then outputting them wherein they output in this format. And then from there, they then have an effect on the environment, the specific air around you, right? It has an impact on the CPU of your device, and then it has an impact like on your brain waves, on your natural waves. So there's something that's been going on wherein it's not the cell phone itself that's been putting out this specific frequency. It's the specific utilization of satellite configurations, the specific use of like iPad configurations, Starlink configurations, etc. Then that use being purposefully merged with chemicals being blasted in the sky, put into the water, etc. So when we're talking about frequency modulation, this is being able to use like specific tools that you guys are going to learn about here to be able to edit your frequency, support your frequency, block things from coming towards you in and out, whatnot, in order to like stop public health concerns, which you're going to find out about, right? So I want to talk about some of the impacts to public health before I talk about like some of the good things that our system can do and that frequency modulation can do. So one of the things here that's been going on is the illicit use of like several different type of technologies for crypto mining, for being able to send pulsations into the electrical grid in order to throw off the CPU and hex table configuration of certain devices, right? So getting into your Alexa in your home, getting into your computer when it's plugged in, etc. And then the use of like a neural monitoring technology that utilizes like chemicals blasted into the sky. And then there's frequencies projected at the chemicals in the sky, frequencies projected at you through maybe your device or pointing a satellite at you, and then from there expanding those particles, and then they're going into like harsher geometric configurations for those of you guys that understand chemistry, and then it's causing like antibacterial resistance and some other things I'm going to talk about here. So that's like the main gist of it. So when it comes to the bacterial resistance, it's actually a lot of the bacteria that it's in our body and that's on like surfaces, because most surfaces have like a bacteria on them, right? And some of the bacteria that's in the sky, they're becoming resistant to chemical and treatment because of the different tools that humans, a small group, are using. And I'm going to talk a little bit about this, but on top of the impacts to public health, it's the social destruction that's going on because all these things are happening and then the technology is being used. Right. So that's like a whole other like gist, right? Let's just really talk about this. So the frequency modulation can impact bacteria growth. So now we're seeing that some of these frequencies that are being put out, when they are in fact with certain drugs that are put into a certain like frequency state, the bacteria is taking on, you know, characteristics of a eukaryote, which is very interesting in science and it's being completely hidden. And yes, of course, think about like, hardcore diseases that take like communicable or infectious diseases that take a bacteria, right, to grow, and then that bacteria is transforming and taking on like components and certain type of organelles of a eukaryote, right? And then they are producing in their pathways and their synthesis processes specific chemicals in the body, or allowing viruses to then come in and then radicalize themselves in that environment where the bacteria is like, she's like beyond like trigonal pyramidal, right? She's like into like octagonal form with whatever she's doing at each angle. Wow. Whoa, that's like completely like you have to be regulated for those of you guys that understand chemistry. So, one of the things that we're seeing here is that that's happening, and then they're mixing with like viruses. And then viruses, like there's a lot of information about what is going on with viruses right now, um, and their metamorphosis, or how existing frequencies are transforming bacteria, and they're merging with environments, maybe with drugs, radicalizing, and what we may be seeing is not really a viral load but a bacterial load. Okay. And then some, even viruses to be present, they need a certain bacterial vector. Okay, so what does that look like for diseases like HIV and research and things like that? Where's that going to go when there's a technology that's being placed in different places, and literally being like weaved into whole entire like sets of phone releases and computer releases to be able to play the technology and host servers? right? So let's keep on going here. So we also have drug efficacy. So when we talk about drug efficacy, that's like the ability for a pharmaceutical, you know, concoction, a biologic, a synthetic chemical to be able to work on you. So we're talking about both the biologic and then also the synthetic, configuration. When we're playing with frequency modulation, it has the ability to jam the logarithm that's put out by the chemical itself that then carries, right, the what we would call the logic of the chemical and how it can function to attach to functional groups, to break down nitrogen bonds, to intercept, hexapentanes, which are very heavily prevalent in fentanyl and other type of opioids. And then from there, we even see something with drug addiction, right, which I'm going to talk about next. But drug efficacy for drugs, for street drugs, because we have specific sets of pharmaceutical drugs that we use to treat, substance use. And then also too for like diseases, bacterial diseases that we just talked about, right? But then also too a platform that I'm going to talk about in a minute that can help us with some of these like issues that we're seeing frequency modulation creating. So then addiction. So when we're talking about addiction, and you're sending out a pulsation and frequencies that are attaching to the substance of a brainwave or changing the biochemical pathways in a body and then expanding, right, the geometry of the chemical, and then it's expanding and using the air or using the tissues that it's embedded in or that it's surrounded by to go ahead and expand. And this is where we get certain things like where you see fentanyl and people are like bent over, and they can't walk up straight because the chemical has natharized in their body. And there's something with frequency modulation specific in San Francisco that really helped the fentanyl epidemic. And we see individuals like their body in a way glued because there's an aspect of fentanyl that it's actually a type of industrial like product. It can be used to make mattresses, filling for walls, that type of thing, fill potholes, that type of logic it carries. So we are seeing that frequency modulation can impact addiction, but one of the things that individuals are trying to do is find specific frequencies that they can use to try to heal addiction. And they haven't really gotten into that up until recently, where we have a system where you can go ahead and put out a specific logarithm, right? And your frequency modulation and open up like in the logic, other tones and other physics that can help with breaking down addiction, stopping the chemical from working, etc. Right? So learning disabilities is like a big thing too. So when we're talking about like learning disabilities, this is like a big thing that started coming up in different low income communities with ShotSpotter. They had to turn it off in Chicago because they were using it to go ahead and project neuromonitoring frequencies. Different companies that were going into the ShotSpotter network, different contracting companies that were coming in and out of the Chicago policing network, and going ahead and using that copy database, access to everyone's phone to be able to host slices and shards of data through the CPU to be able to play a technology, and it was impacting children heavily there and exacerbating learning disabilities. So children eating maybe processed food and it's expanding the particle, or they already have a learning disability related to a biochemical pathway, or related to a specific residue, that genetic or DNA residue. One second. Right? And what was happening here was the frequency modulation was expanding those proteins in the residue. So the medications that they were taking and the type of behavior modifications that they were being given to change, some of that was being like impacted by those DNA residues expanding. Then on top of that, there is the expansion of breathing in chemicals, taking in chemicals in food and whatnot. That's common in low income communities. And then the expansion of the red dyes and harsh chemicals, and then radicalizing in the bodies of children on top of EMF frequencies and different EMF frequencies that were being ran at different times based on different satellites. Right? So, in regards to the unit of power that they were putting out, um, that then impacts the existing chemicals because there's also radiation present, and then alpha and beta decay rates. So a child that can maybe overcome a learning disability with really good support in like maybe 6 months, it can go to 2 years. Right. So there needs to actually be something that's created like based on like how long you were exposed. This is like how much like you could been delayed, and this is like what we need to do right here intensively. There's like a whole entire system that needs to be created in special education for what happened. And there was something going on with like a very illicit like preterm birthing initiative, or like birthing initiative, or early childhood initiative, where individuals were monitoring autism and different behavioral um, uh, differences in children, um, and symptoms and ailments and diagnoses, and staffers were actually trying to get children into clinical trials for their own personal gain and their familial gain and the gain of their professional network. And small children were being uploaded to the technology, which was causing unnecessary issues and havoc. And when it comes to like a small child, and think about the gut biome, which is very important in your first like 2 to 3 years, specifically for like diagnoses such as autism and whatnot. And the bacteria in their stomach were transforming or dying because of the frequency blockers or jammers, whatnot. And that's just like something that's very unnecessary and needs to be put into place immediately. And then of course we talked about the environmental degradation that I talk more in detail about in like a series that I put out. This is just one in part of a series of like what's going to be changing in environment, in medicine, in tech, because of frequency modulation and what we have access to. But radicalizing PFAs in the sky, I need to change sensors and upgrade to think about lead in walls and paint, and frequency modulation being pointed at that person, or being emitted from their phone. They may live like in a place like the Tenderloin. There's people that may smoke in the next door, or they could be somewhere in like maybe Bronx, or Spanish Harlem, where there's it's like a very tight knit community. People have small places. They try to make it work, cooking, in those tight confinements, and then the smoke and all that, and then paint in the walls, things like that, and then frequency modulation, right? So this, and then lead expanding, the particle of lead expanding, or whatever chemical that's existing in the paint expanding and then reacting. And there was actually, in fact, something that happened in New York where several dozens of public housing staff were arrested because of lack of follow through with abating this type of issue, because the frequency modulation was really strong in New York because of just like the culmination of different people, all kinds of different people there. And it became a public health issue because a lot of people passed away in the housing, and it was turning into a thing where they were constantly finding like older people passed away and whatnot. The frequency modulation, yeah, it went very far. So these are just like some of the things that are going on top of like there was like a hospital, and at that hospital, this just recently came out in the media about like they said initially 10 nurses, then they try to scrub that story from the media and say 6 nurses, but really 10 in the whole hospital. It's really higher. It's like about 20. They ended up getting specific type of brain cancers because of the technology being used at the hospital for whatever reason, because of neural monitoring. This is also bringing in things with hospital credentialing, right? Patient safety, HIPAA, confidentiality, Hippocratic oath, also safety as a practitioner, safety for practitioners, support for practitioners themselves that are receiving confidential information from their clients. So there was a lot that was going on there, but just an example of like, some of the things that you're going to see in the media regarding frequency modulation. So when we talk about frequency modulation for health, you know, especially with the children in the school, this can be a great thing where they can also get into, learning about STEM, and different tools and gifts that they can go ahead and like take on to help like their family, their community, their friends, etc. It can definitely be used for like support with autism, but this is the thing when we're talking about these different tools, most of the tools that you guys are going to see me demo that you're going to be able to use, they come from different indigenous groups that are like translated into a code. So it's like a specific tool that I was like able to like get my hands on where you could take like these different let's say for instance like I want to create this type of frequency for autism. I would be able to put these different regimens together for maybe neuropathy, chemical imbalances, substance use disorder, trauma recovery, and then from there, I would know how to bring forth a C++ script that I can output to that individual via NFC chip or quantization. Or then I can go ahead and know how to put together different sounds and tones, which I'm going to demo for you guys to make like different frequencies. Like if I want to regulate my melatonin cycles so that I can have like better sleep, I want like a higher quality melatonin. I get deeper REM cycles instantly. So instead of just going 1 hour, one REM, two REM, I go like straight into like REM 2.5, 3, boom. And I wake up and I feel really good, right? You can do stuff like that. Um, this is like a system that I want to put out in the public. It was like a fight because people want to privatize this and they want to use it for ill will, and then they don't want there to be equity in it. And I just feel like the communities that are impacted the most in public health, of course, they deserve these type of tools. So it's not for privatization; it's for people to be able to take. Even practitioners can take and use it for their clients. They can sit and like do demos with their clients. Like, how do you feel today? Okay, so you want to feel a little bit like elevated, things like that. We can put these different tones together. Okay, so let's see how that like works with like your prescription, and let's see, like those are the type of conversations and talks that are going to be like happening as we move forward. It's a great thing. So frequency modulation can help all this. Now, some of you guys are wondering, like, okay, what about like organ failure? Frequency modulation can help. It can definitely help. Editing your brain waves, yes. So it can help combat depression, postpartum, all that, yes. Because I'm then embedding specific frequencies that are editing my existing frequencies, and I don't need to really take medications, pills, be exposed to like high powered radiation, like any of that. It's a great thing. So, who are some of the contributors to the use of frequency modulation tools in the US and globally, right? Who is causing this? Who could potentially be, putting out high powered like sonic or sound frequencies and weaponry that are causing like issues in special education that are then being used to increase billing and cause regulation in CPS? Who could potentially be like wanting to use a technology like that that's connected to heart attacks? And now there's like specific passing of laws wherein different associations are now getting different monies to perform education for random heart attacks happening in children 12 to 19 years old. It was like an epidemic across the United States. They passed a cardiomyopathy bill to try to combat it, to put funding in the hands of individuals that were actually involved. Um, right? So different people have like their, purpose of using that technology and doing whatever they are doing, but it's causing an impact on the public. And then there's a way that we can use it to actually help, right? So now we can use this tool because that's like the thing that they are using on us. So we could take this and be very powerful with it. That's like the next thing with public health advocacy. The weapons that they used against us, we will now be able to go ahead and like handle this because this can be used to clean water quality. That's done. This can be used to modulate the electrical grid. Everyone can get free internet or sorry, electricity or reduced bills. This can be used to clean up the air. No more chaos and having to pay this and that sensor and attach this and that to that building, right? Which is another EMF network. So, it's unfortunate. Like America and environmental health is like a double-edged sword. It's like we put, one solution forth and then on the other end is something that's like, destroying our efforts, right? So this is a great system because it doesn't do that. So unsuspecting public, who's the contributors? So unsuspecting public is like I talked about this network tied to people's phone, computer, work computer, etc. That's like running these different programs on a collective like server and outputting to like individuals on the network of private LAN. So also to independent network configurations, that looks like people paying just to like have a satellite configured in their backyard and this and this and that. Take different small companies outside of Comcast and whatnot that do that. So it's important to know like those type of companies do exist in network programming. So also too like foundations as well putting money into certain things. because foundations, schools, universities, they can be ISP, IXP providers. So Comcast is an ISP provider, but they own the IXP band, like a satellite in space. So something that people don't know is that the United Nations has satellites, foundations they have satellites, schools have satellites, and then people can go ahead and lease uh, EMF from them, internet. So right. So even with Neuralink, Starlink, it's actually like tied between three of these buckets: unsuspecting public, government servers, and then some corporations in between. Yeah, the government servers is a big one that got like dismantled like recently. So, what are some of the long-term impacts of playing with frequency modulation, right? Because this is going to impact like billing. This is going to impact like how we set up like long-term billing for people that come in and they have like a illness at whatever stage, because the frequency modulation, especially based on like the neighborhood that they go live in, there's going to need to be like public health maps, like all kinds of stuff is going to have to start happening. Oh wow, this may end up making it to the census too, just in order for America for the next like 40, 50 years to be proper in public health and not have like chaotic epidemics, especially for education too, right? So chronic meningitis, right? Inflammation of the meninges. So we know that there's like a layer before like within like the brain skull dynamic, and that it's like a very sensitive type tissue, but it has its own like type of like nerve network and blood supply that impact the brain. And we've been seeing a lot of episodes of meningitis in the media where it's actually a frequency modulation being used, right? So, but chronic inflammation because of the frequency modulation, and then being able to expand particles like cortisol or maybe bad shattered steroids, right? That put the body in a stress response, or shattered sugars and things like that that can cause inflammation, because we know your diet can cause inflammation and phlegm. So that's like something that we need to be looking at too, especially people that already have pre-existing conditions. Okay. So reduction and recovery efforts, and this is what I talked about: frequency modulation being able to like exacerbate addiction, um, especially with the frequency modulation. Like the part about it, it's supposed to impact people's like neural pathways and their brain chemistry to be able to accept like suggestion and thoughts that on the level of the subconscious. But people that like meditate, don't eat meat really, their brainwaves actually are being formulated from a specific residue sequence that's outside of animal protein and chemicals. They're able to see above the technology and see its influence. So that's another thing too. So when people are in those type of like realms where they don't have access to that type of food and water, whatnot, they're more susceptible to this. So it can impact recovery efforts, and this is like something that we saw in specific areas where they had open air drug markets. The markets did not stop. Individuals actually dispersed to different places because the regulation got tougher on these specific drugs because of the deadliness of their production. Right. So there was actually the use of neural monitoring technology then by individuals with substance issues to be able to access their supply because of the harsh regulation that then ended up exacerbating their, uh, uh, affliction. Right. So there's some individuals that have been traditionally on traditional narcotics like crack, whatnot, speed, heroin. That was a different story. The fentanyl, those who were getting like these new rounds of fentanyl the past like 2 years, they saw it the worst. So we do have like different organizations that are supposed to be like working on this, but the science is like, you know, leaving them in regards to how particles are going from trigo bipyramidal to tripyramidal to trigonal to, beyond, cyclic, automatically going from like maybe a functional group to cyclic. How was it like the chemical, like, expanding on itself and creating its like own structure out of, you know frequency? It's using its surrounding, it's using the chemicals and entities surrounding it, and That's where we get like rapid decay of the body, different things like that that we see with fentanyl, even the nose, septuming, rotting of flesh, all of that. The swift edema because of the destruction of the lymph and all of that. So special education readiness, right? Some of the long-term impacts, like how do we, support our special education teachers? And then also too, how do we introduce this to families to be able to use this with their children? Because this is like one of the therapies that they do, recommend like speech therapy, playing different frequencies and sounds and things like that, to help children. I was a child that went through speech therapy, and I was introduced to different frequencies and tones, but because like I had a love of music and reading, I like that more than the frequencies because the frequencies were actually at that time causing the learning disability. It wasn't actually like abating it. So different things were done, and I was taken out of speech therapy, and they were like regulated throughout the state of California. So that's where like I get like a love of like doing this and learning how to make frequencies and being able to help myself and things like that because of what happened to me as a child, right? So riding my bicycle, things like that, changing my logarithm, playing outside, playing with my animals, that really like helped, right? So learning disabilities, right? We don't want to exacerbate those. And this is where we also like are looking into budgets, like long term, like we can't have like generations of children walking around with like learning disabilities, generations of people walking around with like induced abilities, disabilities, or adult onset disabilities because of frequency modulation, which adult onset of disability or adult reactivation of ADHD or different learning disabilities from a child, it's going to come up very heavy. And I do see the Department of Rehabilitation stepping in on this to be able to like combat some of the things that they're going to end up seeing with all of this, right? Because substance abuse is something that ends up like in their lap, as well as like learning disabilities, right? So this is where the exacerbation of public health costs, like we need to start analyzing that because this is going to be something like where we need to have like our programs. It just needs to be something at the very beginning with public utilities where modulation is placed on the grid. It can't exist. Also, two agreements about with different satellite companies, which the government is really getting into like something with space warfare, where they're shooting down different satellites, like setting up different treaties and bases in space to stop that from happening. Because unfortunately, uh, that was something where a few bad actors from the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, were doing that in America, and they were disrupting the peace of our Asian brothers and sisters to a degree that I'm sad to see happen. Because they're beautiful people, and it's very unfortunate what happened. But that's why we're seeing some of the stuff that we're seeing now with the mass deportations too. A lot of Chinese scientists, mainly scientists. So yeah. So now child and youth welfare too, because of how this can impact child and youth behavior and children already being susceptible and not, having fully gone through Erickson's stages of development to understand like what's going on in a relationship, how to have healthy relationships and interactions, and a technology being at play, right? And then they may already having been involved with the special education system, and we need to think about like the juvenile like justice system and like helping our young people. Okay, and this is where we're talking about disruption of social warfare that needs to like really be like put in place, and we can really like if we really come together, like a small scrappy group can get a lot done and just like nip it in the bud where it starts, period. But it's the tools too that we need, and because it is a type of digital warfare, we do need technological tools to handle it, right? So some of the tools that you guys are going to see that we put out for the community, and some of you guys are like, okay, well, why is it that the regular, Python and C++, they can't do this and that? It's because like I said, we have a specific system that can go over the existing matrix that is the binary 0 and 1 reality that the computer pulls from. Like this is like, the range of responses that you will get in the electrical signaling space based on what you type in the computer and based on what the machine can then process. Our system can go beyond that. So I do have another tutorial that you guys can watch, like how would I need to modify my computer? Modify not really your whole entire computer, it's just like your IDE for people that know how to code. You have a development environment where you just put in the code and you run it. It will just be editing your IDE. It would edit like the memory on your computer, upload a specific floating point onto your FPU, your floating point unit that handles like arithmetic, things like that, processing of math, which is important for then processing binary information, um, byte code to machine code to source code. Right? And then from there, you would be able to work with the system easily. So it's possible. It's very much possible. So like it was like so hilarious, like going through putting this out, like my computer being hacked, um individuals putting certain softwares on my computer to take my work off my computer as I was doing it, getting me myself getting a blood disorder because of frequency modulation, and helping myself and helping like dozens of other people with what they were going through. um Finding out about how to like do frequency modulation on seeds and things like that to grow different plants. I grew like a certain type of coffee. It was being like given out from a specific indigenous group in a Spanish indigenous America. Bless them. They sold this coffee to Dunkin' Donuts, and I'm telling you, LA was on fire when I was there, but the coffee is now gone, and everyone noticed it. Yeah. So they called in the FDA and everyone to find out what's the secret, and it's just a coffee that we weren't really selling it. It's just the logarithm of the coffee was so amazing. It's like one of the best coffees that they had in LA. So I just wanted to like, put that out. I grew one of those seeds for that, and it was using like the system floating point system, right? So these are like some of the available tools like that we have a floating point system. So you can apply it to like a specific organ, a biochemical pathway or cellular process. Now, some of you guys are like wondering, like, okay, how would I be able to like do that on the physical body? So you can use sound modulation, which I want to look into that first. So sound modulation, which is like a specific like tool set where skill set where you can go through the A through F tones, and then you can put the A through F tones together in a specific like format. And then you can also then put different equations together, like for centrifugal force for whatever, and put algorithms in a specific format to then also mimic the sound modulation, and to be able to like edit your frequencies, edit your 0 and 1, edit your down to your molecular layer, your cellular layer, right? Sound modulation, because sound can be powerful. So that's one, but also too, like, you people can try an NFC chip, and you can connect yourself to like an NFC chip or any device that just outputs frequencies. Like for instance, they have these like different like handheld massage tools where you can plug like this like headphone jack in, and then you can stick like leads on your body, and you can then project like massage frequencies into your body. I have one of those. I love it. Yeah, and then you just replace like the leads, like they stick on your body for like maybe like 4 or 5 like rounds, depending on like sweat and stuff like that, sebaceous glands and all of that, and of course like chemicals in the sky, right, that are on your skin. So that can impact like how long you can use that thing, but you can then replace those. They sell them easily at CVS, Rite Aid, whatever. Even CVS has those type of tools. You can buy one there. So it's like super simple. You can just stick one on your body and put out the frequency modulation. It can edit you at that point, but it's being able to actually put together this specific electronic configuration that will then speak to me on a specific level, right? The body accepts electrical impulse through the nervous system. From there, it goes through my peripheral nervous system and then reaches my organs, etc. My specific organ or biochemical pathway or whatnot, because those are also connected to certain nerve impulses, right, to be activated. So then you can use like a chemistry system that we have, basically putting certain chemical logarithms in trigonometric functions. So I can, let's say for instance, like I have a certain type of like biologic. I like, it's like this supplement, like it's like chelated magnesium. I can go ahead and look for the chemical sequence for chelated magnesium, and then I can put it into trigonometric functions, like each and every like compound, each and every element in that compound, and get in digital format that chelated magnesium. Then I can output to my nervous system, to myself. How would I be able to do that? That's a great question. So here's where I'm going to do a demo for you in terms of like how I would like to use this. So I usually have this up here, and I have like a C++ like script, and this is like one of the things that I've been like demoing with people, like where I'm using this on myself, and they can see like in real time my brain waves change, or like certain like nerve impulses change or adjust based on this. So it's the electrical language. So I have like, let me go ahead and I have like a C plus plus. Okay, good. I just have like templates that I like kind of put on my computer. All right, so let me go ahead and just use this one for C plus plus and give an example. So writing in the electrical language, so there's six specific indigenous scripts that can be translated in the computer and speak to the CPU. So for those of you guys that watch the hardcore tech breakdown, you're gonna find out about spiral chemistry. You're gonna find out about valence. You're gonna find out about the standard particle model. You're gonna find out about quantization, and then this will make a lot more sense. So this is for people that are going through the series, and if you haven't, that's fine. You can still watch it. You'll find it attached to this. So you can put you could put text in the electrical language. So let's say, for instance, I want to output to a string. I want to output to my file. I can treat my nervous system. This is like a file for like my circle of Willis. Yeah, this was specifically for my circle of Willis to like stabilize like blood flow. So I made a file for my circle of Willis and I put it in the electrical language. Then from there, I can go ahead and output to that file and it gets to me in a quantized state. Now, some of you are like, okay, how could there be something with strength or potency? Yes. Now, the way that that would work though is, are you using like solar power, right? Or are you using electricity when you're running your scripts? Solar power is actually the most powerful. So because of the reactions that the ethanol and all that has to go through, by the time it goes through all of that, goes through the up and down transformer, comes into like your specific grid, goes through all those wires, comes into your house, goes into your plug, into your computer, right? And then onto you, it's like already broken down in its logarithm. So there are things that we actually run in script to code the logarithm of the electricity coming in so that when it's outputting to you as a file, you're not getting like that shattered electricity. But I like the solar better, right? So one of the things that is happening here is that this quantization was proven in a very powerful way with a specific virtual reality technology that they were uploading people to that gives you tinnitus in your ear, extreme tinnitus that is actually like lethal. So because of that, individuals started to realize that there's something with quantization, that even though this individual was no longer next to me with a device that was like projecting frequencies into my ear, or maybe I wasn't near any device, or I was like in a place clear of satellite, there was something with the quantization force in the cells in my ears, the chemicals that then make up my proteins and whatnot, because proteins are like what, they're chemicals, right? And the technology was still able to reach me. So from there, there was a lot more information that is coming out about quantization and what that actually looks like. So I did put out a book about chemistry for folks. The last thing for that book is like putting all the different like equations, in there for folks that want to do, computations and things like that with spiral chemistry instead of shell valence, spiral valence instead of shell valence, excuse me. So now you're going to go ahead and watch like that demo, like, okay, this is how the science behind the programming, how it works. We've been doing all kinds of demos, all types of tutorials. It works. One of the things that like I've done on my computer, I can effectively say, is I've made like a file to output to my like my serial number or to output to my IP, and it like goes ahead and performs specific functions. And it got to the point where like my computer like was tapped by like several different groups trying to get access to my work. But one of the great things about this is like this language is quantized and it's interpreted. So in computer science, you have compiled versus interpreted. So you can have a compiler that goes ahead and makes sure it's like the the language, okay, the syntax is there, it's in the proper order, but in order to then execute it, where you take electricity and then execute that code to then like have a program where I can type in, I can enter in data, or I can then transfer money over the internet, it then needs to be interpreted. So our language is quantized and interpreted. So if somebody tries to take this, my work, and like copy and paste it elsewhere, it won't activate it because I could just turn it off in a quantized space. So can they blast like several thousands of like CPU jolts towards like the language or the script or the IDE to get it to work? It's not possible because it's turned off in the most minute particle space in the standard model. And that's in the range beyond quark, beyond mesons, beyond besons, beyond tau. It's beyond tau. It's like several trillion layers beyond tau. For those of you guys that understand the standard model, okay. So that's just all you need to understand. It gets turned off there and then that's done. Right. So let's keep on going. So this would just be like a please just excuse the name of the shell script. It was like something that I was doing on my computer to like modulate the way in which C++ gets ran on my computer from outside programs. So one of the things that is going to come out here, like I can stream specific floating points to my body. How do we know which ones are good for us? We can go ahead and perform like reactions to find the logarithms of different compounds and chemicals. But would you get that whole chemical that can like make me overdose or make me sick? No, you only get like the pure logic of the chemical. Oh wow. Oh, whereas then if I take it in physical form, my body has to go through all those reactions, stripping this and that to get the specific chemical that I want. And like I can only get like a little bit of it in like 4 pills. But this is like a cleaner way to do pharmacy and medicine. And this definitely works. I've used it on scars, I've used it on myself. People that have like substance use disorder, they've gotten it. Right. So let's keep on going. And again, it's important that you watch the breakdown of all the different coding languages so you can kind of go ahead and see like, okay, how would this work in real time? So if I don't do it in a quantized state where I can output to myself, then I can go ahead and output to an NFC chip or device that I'm connected to. Okay, great. Right. So um, trigonometric functions. And we then go ahead and invoke our chemicals online. This is going to be really great for pharmacy for the shortage. It's like the dog, my neighbor, she like barked in unison because the animals they need epidurals too. Yeah, the puppies, they're coming hot and fast. Summer's coming up. Right? They need lidocaine too. They need better surgical care too. This can improve animal care as well because we'll have like more supply for them. So just like notes from an animal lover. Side note. So, anyways, Boolean logic. Yeah. Yeah, she wants to add her like 10 cents and I think it's hilarious. Thank you. So Boolean logic, right? So what does that look like? So that looks like taking another C++ script and I'm gonna go back and forth in this like demo because we're getting to like the demo page. Right? So brain chemistry adjustment, things like that. So the way that I would be able to take this is, let's say for instance, like I have like a code script and some of you guys are like, oh, this, you don't have to like run it raw like this. We can just create like the program for you and have like it look all nice and pretty with buttons and all that. So I don't want to spend too much time on this. Maybe I shouldn't have copied the whole thing. Right. So how you would like set up like your development environment. If you're playing with C++, Python's a little bit different too. I like both of them, but also too, there's some of the indigenous like scripts that actually flow better through C++ versus Python. Yeah, so depending on like which one you're using or what system for frequency modulation you're using, they like C++ or Python better. So if I have like, let's say for instance, like I want to have like a play with C++. So I can say I want to output, and then I want to play with like a series of like yes or no boolean. So The first thing in order to be able to activate the system to be able to work on somebody is you need to activate a certain like floating point, right? So from there, you activate the floating point, then the floating point, the logarithm is then activated in the script. So it brings down like a whole macros, a whole like template, a whole organization. So now let's say for instance, let's say for instance, I want to output like a bunch of true or false like statements to like myself. So that's what I would like go ahead and do. So one of the things here is so I could say bull and then true. So the bool I'm gonna activate is like glycolysis one equals true. So one of the things like here is okay, I want to activate the Boolean loop. I'm gonna name it glycolysis one. I'm already envisioning though that I created a specific library where uh diseases of glycolysis or diseases of like maybe a urea built up or diseases of maybe like synovial infraction, whatnot. I've already set up the different like algorithms to go ahead, right, in like a list or like type of like they call it like list where I say, oh, um, for this class or this object, this means this and this means that and that means that. So I can take this and say glycolysis one equals true and start running like those loops on people. But really it would be like a series of like true, true, false, false, true. And all that I'm actually doing is I'm like following the biochemical pathway in its synthesis. So what if it's broken, depending on like, let's say for instance, like what disease of glycolysis, right? So there's like maybe like four different types. Glycolysis disease type one, it would be true, false, false, true, true. And it would then readjust the entire chemical pathway, biochemical pathway. So let's say for instance, I have like equals glycolysis in order to stop the biochemical pathway, the shattered biochemical pathway that's produced by a certain type of like residue, a DNA type residue that's promoting then type of like peptide sequence that builds out the organ that then builds out the biochemical pathway that then builds out what they call like the residue, aka like how an organ knows to keep going back or how a cellular process knows to keep writing broken or shattered sequences. Oh, let me give her time. Right. So, anyways, right. So, what would that look like? Okay, bull running a certain like series of Boolean loops, and then it will be like maybe like false, and this will specifically intercept that pathway and that sequence, and then adjust it. Or if it's diabetes two, that broken sequence, it would stop it. It will be like false, false, true, false, 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 right? Like something like that, right? And then also depending on the individual, how long they've had it, also other factors that they're bringing in, like changing their diet, maybe taking chelated minerals that help with diabetes. So now, how would that be true? Why would this like work on the body? Because Boolean logic is just like zero and one logic, true or false, right? So when you're looking at like I'm going to just kind of show you maybe some binary data. This is binary data right here, zero and one. This right here is just this translated. So this word that I typed out in the electrical language, it just says arc then why is it here? It's just a specific indigenous language. Then I go ahead and I can take that and convert it into floating point format because it's already compiled, it's interpreted, and it's quantized. It's an indigenous language, it's an electrical language. So this is where we get different indigenous groups and societies that don't go around people and share information about languages because of what they know about them, right? So then I could take this and then convert it to its binary state. So when we're talking about like the zero and ones bools, a Boolean loop, true or false, is just a zero and a one, zero, one, zero, 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 one, 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 one. And then that's just like writing out the electrical impulse and signal for the CPU to then take it and then process it. All right, let's keep going here. So I wanted to go ahead and do maybe something with the sound modulation, just to like kind of show you guys like an example of like how like I run that system. So it's like a really cool like type of like divination system. I made something the other day for people dealing with uh for people that work in like medicine, social work, etc., law enforcement. It was like the Havana syndrome. A lot of people ended up getting impacted by that. Some people don't get the support to get like $100,000. Like the State Department will give you $100,000 if you're impacted because it does cause like impacts to your health. So I was like making some like tools for folks that were impacted by that because it does have like a great effect on your health, and made some like really cool tones. But it's like a specific tool that I that people can like learn and use, where it's like you learn to put the different like sounds and tones and like color sounds like pink noise, white noise, etc., together in sequence in order to create like specific logarithm bombs that when you listen to them or project them at your energy field, boom, your whole field changes. Just wanted to like maybe show you one as an example. It's kind of loud. Okay. So I told you it was pretty loud, but it like hits with like that sawtooth, the frequency, and it just like cuts through like all of that unk and gunk and like hits your brain waves and completely just like strips stuff off of it. So I know that's like a quick sample, and I didn't, for some people it may be like, jarring, but it was very, very helpful for the people that were experiencing some of that got the sample and really enjoyed it. So all right, let's keep on going. So this is just like a little bit about what we can do, and this like works. That's the thing. The great thing is that it works, right? So I've had people contact me about doing demos, wanting to learn more, especially for people that are experiencing like substance use disorder. Especially for like really kind of rebuilding organs, like getting them stabilized after like maybe hemorrhaging or needing hematology because it some of these substances can shatter your blood, or needing to like just stabilize their anatomy after overdoses or whatnot, because there's chemicals getting mixed into everything. People don't know what they're getting these days. So just one of the passions that I have been seeing this get out is helping people that have substance use disorder. So let's keep on going. So what are some more next steps like behavioral health? So really just putting this out for the SUD community, and then the chemical editing system that you all are going to learn about in our other like demo. And then with like primary care, um, bringing this into primary care and showing providers like how they can like use this like for their clients to help them, right? So as chronic illness proliferates in America, I think one of the things that I just wanted to remind folks is that we have a system and a tool to help ourselves. So you guys go ahead and take this. You help yourself, do the demos on yourself. you'll learn about the languages, or you get to use the language libraries. So, anyways, you guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy.